But as soon as you talk about business, you're almost a bad person in France. It's like there's this illusion that, maybe with Macron, we're a
trying to
startup
scam
nation.
people, whatever.
But the truth is like, you're like, if you're an entrepreneur, you're some kind of an evil.
Yeah.
And I know
snake
people
oil.
believe that have changed because you live in that thing, but I wait for the next election in France, and you'll see a lot of crying entrepreneurs who are in startups who are going to be realizing that France is still, not too business oriented.
Welcome to this week's of Messy Middle. We're laughing here. I think we're having a good time hosting the Messy Middle. We wanted to actually talk this week. I mean, we really wanted to talk about summer. It's so nice, the weather. I know everybody's like, "Oh, you can't talk about the weather. It's so bad to talk about the weather when you get on a Zoom call." But no, it's fantastic for all three of us. But I want to talk about something that we were discussing before the call. It's this European mindset versus the American mindset and the messy middle. I don't even know how to get into this, so I'm going to throw it over first to you Europeans, even though Frank has an American passport and he's American. But still, he lives in Estonia right now.
I feel judged.
Teddy lives in America.
Citizen of the world.
No, but I guess
European.
this opens a wider conversation about the cultural aspect of messy middle. What's the messy middle in Asia, in Europe, in the States, in South America, in Africa. At least I can talk for Europe, or I guess for the French.
Australia.
Antarctica, that's Australia, yeah. Japan. Well, we're not going to do all of them. But I guess our target audience would be a mix of North America and Europe. But to me, yeah, I think like the European messy middle would be stop working for a year, go on holidays, like recharge, whatever. While the American messy middle may be a week and then start something else. It's kind of the feeling I've got. But the business in Europe is very, very different from the business in the US. Is what I see. I miss the US for business, definitely. It's like one of these where.
So I want to get into that.
Sure.
The Europe versus the American, right? Because personally, we all have different styles, and we're kind of a blend of. Obviously, we're all kind of a blend of American and Europe. Now, less me. I'm probably way more American because I grew up here, but I also have some European ideals. But like, I want to hone in on that point of the Americans a week later start something. I don't think that's true. That's hyperbole. But Americans don't stop working on figuring it out. So my question is, do Europeans, when something stops, and this is a catch-all generalization, but like, let's say, raise some money and it'll be a European seed round. So they raise $5,000. I'm kidding. They raise, whatever, $500,000 or a million. And it takes their VCs 6 years to let them know. And the thing fails. How long actually does it take from a European? Because the American side, I've seen it's a few months. It could be a year, but the Americans don't stop working in that year. It's not like they're like, let me holiday or let me do this. So, Frank, what happened?
Yeah, it's cultural. And again, I think I feel like I'm more American than the average American. That's kind of why it's like always the first generation immigrants where I'm almost disappointed by the US sometimes because I really moved for the love of freedom and the love of entrepreneurship. And I'm always surprised, especially after going to New York or California, where I see the love for red tape and taxes and regulations. But Europe is like, 100 years of history of that. But to me, if you go back to the cycle about the startups, you're right, jokes apart, that valuations are lower in Europe.
Yeah.
VCs are not taking much risk. I mean, I've got tons of VC friends around, but I always joke, and the advice I give to founders in Europe is just which startup are you going to copy? Because I cannot think of one startup in Europe that has been successful and that's not a copycat. Most of them are. And the one who are not usually are maybe European funded, but they move to the US.
Or they get acquired. So do you think...
But so, yeah, again, like to go back to the timing and what happened after, like to me, the the main difference I see in Europe, and that's why I don't fit in Europe versus, I mean, I love living in Europe, but if I'm in the US, if I'm in anywhere in the US, I guess New York or San Francisco, like some of the main hubs, I love talking about business all the time because that's my life, you know. I love entrepreneurship, I love building startups, I love AI, whatever is the thing that comes to mind. And then if I meet someone else, I'll be able to talk to them about it for like 1 hour, 2 hours, and it's awesome. In Europe, you never talk about business naturally. It's like there's a time for that. It's called a business meeting. But outside of that, you talk about other things, and I don't know what to talk about. And so there's like this obsession of business.
What are the so if
I don't know. Again, I'm really bad at that. But
Football, sports.
You would have
whatever.
to ask my co-founder, who's better than me at that. But I don't know what to talk about. Like I'm always like, what do you think about this, that? And like people are they love to talk about other things. Maybe politics, I guess, is a big one.
Politics is a big one too.
Yeah.
people talk about politics though here because of the election coming out.
Yeah, but it's reversed, right? It's like
that,
in France. I mean, in France, again, I don't want to caricature too much, but it is kind of what it is, which is, again, people talk a lot less about business in France, for example, than the US. But again, you would talk about business during a business meeting, but I feel like you would talk politics during, I would say, almost like politics or friends meetings. But you're not going to go to a random event and say hi, and then start to argue. Oh, although I don't know, maybe now you would. Who knows?
Yeah.
So
that might not be true. Sorry, actually, I take that back. Yeah, you talk about politics all the time, but as soon as you talk about business, you're almost a bad person in France. It's like there's this illusion that maybe with Macron we're a startup nation.
People, whatever.
But the truth is like you're like if you're an entrepreneur, you're some kind of an evil.
Yeah.
And I know people believe that have changed because you live in that thing, but I wait for the next election in France, and you'll see a lot of crying entrepreneurs who are in startups who are going to be realizing that France is still, not too business oriented.
Do you think, okay, so prediction time, do you think, so if the French government changes and becomes less business oriented, do you think all these AI startups that are growing in France will end up becoming almost seen as the devil?
No, I think most of the French ones are actually Americans already, so.
Okay. So like Mistral, you think Mistral is going to move to America? Do you think? No.
I think like France and still US startup will come. It's like you hire people in France. People love living in France, but where you get capitalization, all that. After that, again, if the left government gets elected, it's going to be really, really bad for entrepreneurs for sure, because that means crazy taxes. If the far right gets elected, it's still going to be an awful time too, because it's going to send such a bad signal. So I don't really see it's crazy or important politics is for companies in France or startups, or maybe the same in Macedonia. Well, I feel like in the US, whether you have Trump or Biden or anyone else, like it's not going to. People are going to be annoyed by some regulation, but it's not going to shut down, like the business.
No, because the U.S. is a capitalistic country. So
it's exactly
so all of this cultural.
But sorry, I want to be sure Teddy talks a little bit about Macedonia or the Balkans, I guess, which may be even worse than France in terms of, because France has done a good job, like to credit over the past couple of years. I just never believed it would sustain.
As our sponsor this week, starting startups in France, to its credit, they've done a great job.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I feel like in the US in general, people talk a lot more about politics than they used to before. And where I'm coming from is we grew up talking about politics. It's just like default conversation everywhere you go. So like people don't talk about business. Even business is politics in that sense, it's everything is wrapped in politics. You pick side and you fight for your side. You don't know why, but you're just, you don't even pick side. You're just put in like specific you're labeled, and then you have to defend something that you may not necessarily believe in. But in general, I think Europe, Macedonia including, a lot of non-working days, a lot of laziness in general that I don't really like. And I want to work.
Is it lazy?
I don't know what it is. People just look for excuses. I remember we even did this in G6 in my previous company. We built this app. I don't know the translation now in English, but basically the app helps you figure out what days you can connect. Non-working day that's on Wednesday, and then there's one next Tuesday, so it makes sense for you to take Thursday and Friday off, and then the next Monday off, so that you will maximize your non-working days. So people spend time and effort, and we even build an app around that. I don't know why, but it's just like everyone wants to chill and show off and not work. And it's easy to be successful there if you just work slightly more than others. This is for Macedonia specifically, or maybe not Macedonia, but just like the region there. And I'm not sure about Europe. I don't know why people take so much time off, or why do they enjoy just like chilling, taking vacations.
My question to both of you, because I'm not European, I am American.
But after that, let's talk about the US, because we're...
Yeah, I want to talk about the US, but I want to get to this final question, because we're talking about the messy middle period for founders. When they start something and or when they end something, they sell something, they start something. I can like name a few examples of guys who are serial entrepreneurs in Europe, Xavier Neal, right? That's the only guy. I mean, maybe the guy, Daniel from Spotify, he did Kazaa and then Spotify, and a company before that. He did Kazaa, right? I'm not like making that up, right?
Which one?
Did he do Kazaa, or did Nicholas Zenstrom do Kazaa?
Probably Nicholas, I think. I think
Nicholas,
not the guy from Spotify. You were saying that,
but they're friends. I think I'm screwing it up. It's already summer here. I'm on European vibes. But no, I can name a few serial entrepreneurs in Europe and how they built their companies, which seems more U.S. Style than European. But like, do you think seeing European, like, how many founders in Europe do you know that have failed and started another company, or succeeded and started another company out of your friend group, like compared to the American counterparts?
No, I think quite a lot. I mean, on my end, I would think, but my network is not representative. So I see a lot of French founders who, keep doing stuff and building stuff. So it's just the scale of it, the way you do it, the style of it is different. Maybe the aggressiveness. If I look at, there's a lot of limitation. At least I came back recently because my last startup is based out of France, but I spent so much time working with a lawyer on trying to simulate equity vesting, because it doesn't exist in the legal system. Like, how do you build startups when you have no equity investing? It's like it's so complicated, and and the law is everywhere. The complexity of how you manage employees in France is just insane. I think you have like 5,000 pages of codes, and that you have to know. So anyway, but the thing I see also is Americans founders coming to Europe, and to them it's like, I feel like if you come from New York, or if you come from San Francisco and you move to Europe, it's like you trained on high altitude, in the Himalayas, and then you're going close to water level, and then it's so much easier. Like you have connections to attract capital, exactly how things move. Like so I feel like it's quite a good deal for some Americans, post exit, to move to Europe, kind of chill, and then launch a startup, maybe less ambitious, but it's almost like
we know a few of them from our post exit.
That's another trend I see. I see that trend.
In Europe right now, they decide to move.
Like they post exit founders, they move to Europe, and they want a better life, and because at one point they get bored, they ended up launching a business, and they realize it's not that easy. Like there's slowness, and things are a little bit different, but I feel like they're very efficient. The language barrier might be one thing, so they need to find maybe co-founders who are local. Maybe we should interview one. Actually, it'd be interesting. We know one or two.
Yeah, we can introduce Jeremy. We can interview Jeremy in Paris.
That'd be cool. That'd be fun to have his point of view.
The post-exit founder we know, Teddy, you haven't met him, but Frank knows him. He co-founded a company called Spot Hero, and lives in France. And he actually just started a new business in France called Horizon H, I believe. And they're buying European companies, primarily French companies, and going to inject the American style of entrepreneurship into them. So yeah, we'll definitely interview him, because it'd be fast. And I'd be curious to hear, he's spending a year in France, and it'd be interesting to know, will he come back?
And vice versa. I feel like I feel like there's also French people. I mean, a lot of French people I know like to stay in France, so they're very attached to it. But I believe there's also a couple of people who just do an exit in France and then kind of move to the US. So at least the Europe, because Estonia also, I can see that, but like, yeah, Fabrice. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But he also studied in the US, so I think. But so
he studied in the US, then went back to France, and came back to the US.
But the back and forth is very common. After that, Asia is something I am curious about, for example. I'd be very curious to live in Asia and see if I can launch businesses there. Vietnam, to me, comes to mind, even though it's a communist country. It sounds weird, but it's like maybe I just want to be... I mean, a lot of communist country, I guess, in Asia.
You could launch...
It's a different kind of communism.
Yeah, you could launch the Vietnamese AI massage parlors.
Sure.
Where it's like massage, AI, robots.
No, but the thing is, like the entrepreneurial culture in Asia is also very different. I mean, I've seen it at least through Startup Weekend. Japan being even very specific to them, but the way, for example, entrepreneurs you meet when you go to Asia, at least the one I know in Vietnam, they tend to have very different kind of business. So in the US, you wouldn't think like a part of Elon. Usually, it's like an entrepreneur equal one business. In Asia, usually an entrepreneur is a guy who's going to have like 20, 30 business, and it's going to be like a restaurant, a startup that does payment, a bunch of buildings. Like also, the style is very different.
Yeah, and it depends.
I think we have.
Depends on the country.
And very family also.
Yeah.
I think once you taste that American approach to entrepreneurship, to building companies, people tend to love that more. Like even we mentioned a guy from Spotify and other European companies who eventually come to the US. They may not decide to live here, but they accept that type of leadership style also.
I'm not sure about that, because I've seen it like with Startup Weekend back in the days in France, where we kind of imported that spirit and that worked really well, and people love the freedom. But I feel like now we're going to start to see the backlash to that, where people will say, what about, not being focused on business? What about, enjoying life more and getting paid more and having a more security, more safety, and less like unstable startups. And even in the US, to be fair, I mean, I see a lot of people like in the US, especially on the left side, who hate startups, who hate that mentality. And so it's kind of funny. I wonder if there's not like it's not going to be like a balance from the next generation who might actually really don't like, startups at all.
I don't know. That sounds like a woke entrepreneurship to me. Like if you want to solve a problem, help people do stuff, do great things, be successful, there you have to work your ass off. There's no alternative. Everything else is just like excuses.
That's not my point. My point is just what will the vast majority of the population think?
I don't know if it's vast majority. I know people do that right now.
Yeah.
But I don't see that happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think generationally, if you're talking about generationally, and if we're focusing on America, kind of beat the European topic to death there. For the American messy middle, I think a lot of it, America's more expensive, and a lot of the scenarios of founders that are in San Francisco, New York, LA, even Miami these days, also contributes to the speed of which you want to find your next thing, is because it's not only expensive, but it's also extremely capitalistic. So our identity is tied to what we do for a living. And, you don't, I know a bunch of founders who have taken 3 weeks off when they start something new, 15 months, 18 months, but they've never really taken, like, even the guys are like, I've taken a real long sabbatical, traveling around the world.
They're still thinking about business.
They're still thinking about business. They're still working. They're still doing this. Like, even me, I give myself a really hard time for the last 9 months of not having a North Star of everything I'm working on. But people ask me when I'm working, I'm like, I've got this podcast we do weekly. I've got Tectalia. I'm doing the consulting. Then I killed a bunch of ideas. And they're like, wait, so like you didn't take a vacation? I'm like, how can I take a vacation? I'm like, it's impossible. It's my brain is running. And they're like, no, you should go to this, south of Italy.
But again, these are different, right? they kind of go back to the culture of the country. I remember there was a good
Yes.
book about the history of entrepreneurship in there was a Kaufman Foundation like published that, but there's a couple of things I remember. I mean, for the US, it's the
Another one of our great sponsors, Kaufman. Thank you, Kaufman.
sure no, I mean the main one is in the US that was the Protestant culture, which is heavily
Yes.
belief that God rewards those who work really hard.
Yeah.
The France, for example, was heavily influenced by people like Zola, and Victor Hugo, which we study at a very young age, and it's basically the story of the exploitation.
Victor Hugo?
Yeah, Victor Hugo, which is the exploitation, the exploitation of.
You said Yoda
Sure.
the first one? What was the first one?
No, I pronounce it correctly, Hugo. And the thing is, it's really the culture of the post-industrial time where the workers were exploited by the evil entrepreneur, and that these things are kind of heavily, inserted into the DNA of the countries, and that's why to me France cannot be the same as as the US for entrepreneurship. It tries to, but maybe England might be more prone to that. But
Even that.
you have these movements where things are kind of go up and down. But I feel like right now with a crisis coming in the US, in Europe, like the natural will come back, and it's gonna be really, really tough years to come, no doubt. And so where to go to do your messy middle, and I know we talked about it before, but I believe like now the thing that's new also is that you can indeed run an American company while being based in France somehow. It is possible. You can structure it that way. But I don't think for business it really matters. It depends what you do. But for at least the way people experience the messy middle, no doubt there's a huge cultural gap between, the way a European, and again, Europe is vast, but, a Spanish guy would be different from an Estonian, for sure.
Different from Macedonian, different from the Greek
And the same in the
guy.
US. I mean, to be fair, someone on
Yeah,
the East Coast and the West Coast would be very different too.
Well, yeah, it's East Coast, West Coast, but then you also have differences
Midwest.
between. But East Coast, West Coast, but you also have Northeast, Southeast, and Sun Belt.
All the nuances.
If like I learned my entrepreneurship chops were honed in New York, right? So when I went back to Florida during COVID, and started, meeting a few people there and seeing what people were working on, it was like, oh, here's the New Yorker coming in, and New York has always been. Florida has always been a destination for New Yorkers to go to. We had Shane on the podcast talking about it, and it's like it's when you've got the person coming from New York and going into that environment, you're kind of like, why aren't these people working? It's a Friday.
Yeah.
And like, oh, well, it's like 100 degrees outside, and you're like, okay, well, let's pull it together. Let's not have the Florida mindset. And it's the same thing, San Francisco versus LA, right?
San Francisco to me might be the best. It is, I believe, the best place for the type of entrepreneurship we know. Well, I like the way San Francisco does it, because it looks like people are slacking. It looks like people are on holidays. They'll be like whatever, going.
Let's go for a hike.
Yeah, exactly, a hike or Burning Man or whatever.
Yeah.
But that hike, you'll keep talking about what's the future, what's AI, what's this opportunity, like these things. Like it never stops, and I like that. I like that it's. And again, it depends on people. For other people, it will be exhausting. But to me, that's where I find a lot of energy, and I kind of miss it. But then I hated San Francisco at one point. Like at one point, I remember San Francisco in the 2014-15. It was horrible. But 2008 was great. It's funny. It's like wine.
Why was it horrible?
It's like millésimes, and I love the San Francisco of 2008, 2009. Less fun after, and I feel like now I think it's back, and I think it's a great time to be there.
Yeah, could be.
I think Teddy, you were saying you were torn between New York and San Francisco.
Like I want to personally, lifestyle-wise, be in New York, but like work culture, I want to be in San Francisco. That you can feel, not necessarily San Francisco, but the Valley in general, places around there where it's just working environment. You feel like you're in a calm office all the time.
There was always 20
surrounded with
conferences every
people,
day. There was always stuff to do.
and not just the events, but like people work. Coffee shop, they work everywhere. It's just like people with laptops doing stuff, writing code, and it's, I don't know. I just love that. So I'm torn between those two. I'm the builder, and also I want this lifestyle. So
I understand.
yeah, very messy.
We all understand.
Yeah,
We'll be there.
Yeah, exactly.
Physically, place.
I think we covered this topic pretty decently. Let us know in the comments if we haven't. Who's got the quote this week? Is it Teddy or Frank?
No, I gave the one last week. It's your...
Like music playing while we're looking for this? Maybe.
Yeah. There are a bunch of memes on X right now related to this fight between, not just fight, but like America versus Europe. People were like shit posting like about coffee shops. I think one guy posted that in Europe some coffee shops are like asking people specifically not to bring their laptops, not to work, to mingle more, blah blah blah, versus America where everyone just works. I don't know, it's Germany or France somewhere.
Has to be France
or the Netherlands.
What did they say exactly?
There's like a banner in a coffee shop
bring your
that
laptop,
says "Don't bring your laptop. You don't work here."
You had that in Brooklyn too. I remember.
That's fair. Yeah, if they're Brooklyn, and there's some places where you're like, "Don't bring your laptop here because you're going to sit here all day and you're not actually going to buy anything." And
which is fair. I get it.
Which is fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe only in New York because there are a lot of people here and you're just keeping this table. But I don't think it's in other places.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't blame the entrepreneurs. They do what they want, but if it's the bad move, then their business will shut down. If it's the good move, then good for them. But the thing actually, while Gabriel looks for his quote, it reminds me like I never realized that before. I know Elon was talking about how much we never dream about people using their phones, or you never dream about using your phone. But I realized recently I've never seen a movie where people spend all their time on their phone. And so back to the laptop, like maybe there's a reason people hate that. You don't even see them in the movie. Can you imagine a movie where everybody all the time is like in real life watching their phones?
And as I said, the comment was reality shows. People watch their phones all the time.
Yeah, true.
If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. Can you guys guess who said that?
It sounds like a music song, like something like, is it like, close.
Just too fast.
It sounds like it sounds like the song, about don't wait for love, love always comes.
Oh yeah, that one too, yeah.
I'm sure he loved music, so I wouldn't be surprised. He must have stole it. All right.
Well, until next week.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.